Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for ShiftSix's new webinar titled Navigating Legal Workflows, Strategies for Law Firm Efficiency. My name is Bryan Figueroa. I am the president at ShiftSixOS and a legal operations nerd. Joining me today is our lovely guest, Jared Correia. He's the CEO at Red Cave Law Firm Consulting. Jared, would you kindly just provide our guests with a little bit of your background?
Sure. Also a legal operations nerd, I guess, in some ways. And this is going to be a dope webinar, everybody listening. After this, the company is going to be called Shift7. So I am a former attorney, now a business management consultant to lawyers, and I've been doing that work for about 15 years. Effectively, like I help lawyers to grow their businesses, make more money, run more efficient businesses, whatever their goals are attached to. And I work with law firms on a private basis, so law firms hire our company. And then I also have partnerships with about 25 bar associations across the US. We're the exclusive consulting partner for those bars. So anything business management related, any questions law firms have, we help them with those. And a lot of the conversations we've had since the pandemic is sort of centered around process management and workflow, which is maybe not a surprise. So here we are.
Awesome. Well, happy to have you here, Jared. And it doesn't sound like your hands are busy enough. So let's dive in. All right.
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. So the topics that we'll be covering today are going to be, the evolving legal landscape, addressing the AI elephant in the room, legal workflow and efficient strategies for law firms looking to grow. And lastly, outsourcing and offshoring in legal practice and how that's really evolved over, the past few decades. So just
what's AI? In. No, I'm just kidding.
Right. We'll get there.
AI seems to be anything, all anybody wants to talk about anymore. So we're starting off with something different. That's good.
I mean, for AI itself, right? I mean, I think it really just deserves its own section. So when we get there, I think that's going to be where majority of our time will be spent, right?
That's usually how it goes. And sorry, I lost the slide. What's the first thing we're talking about again?
The first thing we're talking about is going to be the evolving legal landscape, right? And with you touching on COVID right
evolving. Now. Yes.
Right. And so, over the past few decades, we've really just witnessed an unprecedented change in tech advancements and really just innovative ideas with law firms that have just really profoundly transformed the industry and operations in the industry as a whole.
Oh, man, yeah.
So with that, from the emergence of powerful legal software to automation, artificial intelligence, obviously, and just versatile communication tools such as GoToWebinar that we're using, right? What is, in your opinion, the most significant change that you've seen?
Yeah, can I be an old man for a second here?
Let's do it.
I started consulting in 2008, way back in the day, and I had practiced in law firms for about 5 years before that. And the first thing I latched onto was, oh my God, like you can operate a law firm now in the cloud, which was like a totally new thing at that point. Like nobody was using that. And that to me has been the most significant change from that time period from like 2008 to 2023. Now moving forward, I think it's probably going to be AI applications and we'll get there. But that was a big thing for a number of reasons. One, it allowed people to connect virtually, which was never a thing before. You always had to be in one place. You always had to have physical devices. You always had to have physical desks that you were sitting at. And then the other thing, which I think is kind of underplayed a little bit, is like, if you came to me in like early 2008 and you're like, I want to start a law practice, whether it's a totally new law practice, you've never done it before, or whether you want to start another law practice, you want to switch out of one you're in, the cost for that was going to be like $50K for software. It was all desktop software. You had to buy the software. You had to update the software, exactly. You had to have the servers. You had to have IT people. You had to have people in the office managing the software. And it was just so costly. And so the thing I think that's really probably more important than anything about cloud technology is that it democratized law practice costs for small firms so that you could compete with bigger providers at less cost. And that was like a huge thing. And now I tell people, like I talk to some people now, I was talking to some lawyers the other day who want to start a firm. And they're like, it's so expensive to start a firm. I have to buy so much technology. And I'm like, bro, you're paying like $800 a month for the software. This was like 100 times as much 15 years ago. You don't know how good you have it. So I think it's kind of cool that we've got to this point where people are like, oh, that's too much. Whereas 15 years ago, I would have been like, wow, that's just like a staggering deal. And all the stuff that branches off the cloud. Right now, you got softwares that are integrating more aggressively than ever before, so you can pull in all this data. You can start utilizing reporting with like just massive chunks of information, which allows you to make better decisions about how you run your law firm. All that and more really has to do with cloud software. That's the root of the whole thing, and that's the biggest change I've ever seen in the legal tech space.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, especially touching on the cost that it takes to start up, right? I mean, legacy software was cumbersome. You needed servers, right? You needed an IT department to constantly maintain that, right? And not only
Right.
that, you needed to ensure that your entire staff was maximizing that software. Now, you can essentially pick different tiers of different softwares that you have available, and depending on really what your law firm focuses on and your specific workflow, it can really make or change, make or break that decision within the software itself. So
Right.
that kind of leads me to my next question. How do you pick the right practice management software for the firm?
Oh man, I get this question all the time. Everybody, you're all very lucky to get to watch me blow my nose in HD. As I was telling Bryan before we started, like everybody in my house is sick. You saw my wife just leave; she's going to the doctor's right now. But I'm toughing it out for the team. I get this question all the time, like what case management software do I use?
Right.
And it's a hard question because there are like hundreds of them, literally. What I thought was interesting, and I'll just digress for a second, but I'll get back to the main point, which is around 2008, Clio comes out, Rocket Matter comes out, 2007 maybe, and those are like the first real cloud-based case management softwares that got traction in the marketplace,
Right.
and they did really well. Like Clio had the biggest capital raise in the history of Canada. Rocket Matter just got acquired a couple years ago. Clio had another huge raise, and like everybody in the legal tech space was like, you know what? We should just build a whole bunch of back office technology. And now there are 700 case management softwares out there. But what they didn't do was focus on front office technology. So nobody built CRMs, nobody built
Right.
chat tools, nobody built scheduling products. So what's interesting now is that I kind of view this as almost like a second wave of legal software where now everybody's like, oh, we actually need front office technology too. We need lead management just as much as we need client management. And that really happened during the start of the pandemic when everybody was like, oh, I can't get the client to come into the office anymore. Nobody wants to touch my pen. Nobody wants to sign a contract. Nobody wants to bring me a check. And you had to create digital client journeys, whereas all that stuff was analog based before. So that's something that you should be aware of if you're looking for software, that you probably want the lead management piece of it as well. But that doesn't make it any easier to find the case management software. So what I tell lawyers is you want to start with a wish list. So to me, it's like buying a house, right? Because everybody, when they're buying a house, they have an idea where they say, this is the house I want. I want my perfect house. Got to have a 2-car garage, got to have an Olympic swimming pool, got to have 3 stories. And then when you go out there on the marketplace and you see that the perfect house doesn't exist and the perfect house maybe costs a lot more than you want, everybody starts thinking, well, maybe I don't need a garage. Maybe I can get by without that. And maybe I could just have a jacuzzi. That might be cool. So what I tell people is get your wish list together, figure out the things that you want in a case management software, and then B, figure out the things that you hate about your current case management software that you either need fixed or there are features that don't exist that you want to exist, and start there. And then the rubber's going to meet the road when you do the demos, which is sort of like going and looking at other different houses. So you set up all these demos, you ask the right questions, you start drilling down into the software. Maybe you take a trial version of the software and you begin to look at that. At that point, you'll have a much better sense of what's actually available in the marketplace. And I tell lawyers all the time that a lot of lawyers have the idea that the software is going to be perfect for them, but that's not what you're looking for. You're looking for a fit for the practice. And then what's really cool about the cloud stuff is that if there are things that you want that tool to do, but it doesn't do, you can supplement it with other systems and they can be integrated. So all the information and the data kind of existed that case management software hub. So get the wish list together, and then I tell people like pick 3 to 4 different softwares to vet, run the demos, ask about the security, and then bring that to your team and make the decision as a team. Because the other thing that a lot of lawyers do is they'll be like, hey, everybody, it's Monday morning at 9:30. I bought you all donuts, and we've completely replaced our technology platform. So good luck. Like having those conversations in advance, getting people involved, actually gaining input, using that kind of transparency is a much better way to do this. So that's generally the advice, but that's still hard because people will Google stuff and then they'll be like, oh my God, there's 200 options. I'm just not going to do this. And then it's a year later, 2 years later. So a lot of the people I consult with is like, can you help me drill down to like the features I want and then like the 3 or 4 softwares I should be looking at? But it's not light work at all.
Right. So develop a plan, make sure you get the team buy-in in it because they're the ones that are going to be operating it, and ultimately
Right.
execute it with top-down management, making sure that everyone's on the same page throughout every step of the process to make sure you don't have the donut scenario, right?
Right. The donut
And so what,
scenario. I have to start
hey,
using that. I like that. As
that's
long as I get donuts, that's cool.
listen, don't talk to me about donuts right now, or else I'm gonna leave the webinar too early. That brings me to the thought of disjointed, tech stack. So often when I
All right.
talk to law firms, right, they, they have brought their software on a more reactive basis, right? They realized that they had a need for an accounting piece within their firm, so they decided to go out with other research. What are your thoughts towards fixing a disjointed tech stack, and what would you suggest be the correct steps to transition more to a central source of truth, such as a Clio, a Leap, one of those other full
Yeah.
practice management suites?
I know you've been talking to Chris Stock because you're talking about source of truth. Um, I see this a lot too. And so you're calling it disjointed tech stack. I like that. When I talk to people about it, I usually talk about how they're working in silos. Like you've
Mm,
got all this data and all this information, but none of it's connected in a real way. And I think you're right that lawyers, law firms, they often make reactionary decisions. So in my experience, when a law firm decides to do something drastic about its technology, it's never like, hey, or it rarely is like, we've had a thoughtful 2 month period where we've really looked at our software and figured out what we want to do, and now we're going to make changes. It's usually some kind of tragic consequence, like our server blew up, or we
right.
had a data breach, or we dropped a deadline because we're so inefficient. It's always something like that that makes a move. It's like, dinosaurs chilling 65 million years ago, and all of a sudden an asteroid hits, right? And you got to do something. Um, so, in terms of like unifying software, I think it's easier than it's ever been. And it used to be that you had to figure out, okay, who's got direct integrations for these tools? So if I want to connect things, I got to figure out these companies that work together. So I can't have somebody recommending to me just one software. I need somebody to recommend 6 softwares so I know they'll actually work together. That would have been the thoughtful approach back in the day. Now, what's really interesting to me is that there are these tools that provide indirect integrations between softwares. So you
That's right.
got products like Zapier, you've got tools like Make, which essentially allow you to combine any software that has written to the API for that third-party bridging tool. And that opens up a whole world of possibilities. So, Clio, you mentioned them, they have a ton of direct integrations. That was like a market advantage for them for a long time. Nobody else really has
Right.
as many integrations as they do. But you look at a software like MyCase, which is another case management software, they just came out with a Zapier integration like 3 months ago, something like that. And now, if you're using that software, you can connect any tool that's on Zapier to that product. And that opens up a world of possibilities for you. So what I think is great is that you don't necessarily have to buy things in packages anymore. So people have talked for a while about this notion of like an operating system for legal. You'll hear case management software company CEOs talk about this in the sense that, hey, we'll give you all the tools you need. You won't need anything else except for what we're giving you. And that's just not true. Like there's so many different softwares out there that law firms may want to choose. And also, like I may say, hey, I like your software, but there's two other softwares that do the same things that you do that I like better. So for example, not from the case management realm, but like I've got Microsoft 365, but I hate Microsoft Teams with the fire of a thousand suns. It is a terrible product. So I'm like, I can use Microsoft Teams, sure, but I would rather just buy Zoom and decrease the pain in my life.
Right.
And I don't want to use Microsoft Teams chat. So I would rather just buy Slack instead. I'm happy to do those things. And I think lawyers are similar in the sense that they are looking for best in class. And what's great is that now that you've got these bridging tools, it's easier to connect everything. And so if I'm a law firm and I'm looking at getting to the point where my systems are not siloed anymore, the first thing I'm going to do is see, okay, do I have tools right now that I like and use that have direct integrations with each other? If we haven't set that up, let's set that up. If that option is not available, will these tools connect via a third-party bridging software? And let's set that up and figure out what triggers we want to use to make those work together. And then the third option would be, in some cases, like you don't necessarily have to avoid the silo. So if I had a client I was talking about this the other day with, they have a case management software they really love. They have a non-legal CRM they really love. They are not connectable currently unless they did it themselves. And you don't want
Right.
to build you don't want to do an API integration yourself if you're in a law firm. Trust me, 95% of law firms, 99% of law firms, you don't want to do that. So at that point, I said, look, like let's not try to fit a square peg into a round hole here. Do your intake on your CRM that you like, and then there's going to be a manual process importing over some of that data to the case management system. But if you like these two softwares and you want to keep using them, you have an intake person at the firm. Once that client actually converts and they sign an engagement agreement and make a payment, you have somebody just cut and paste and put the data in the new matter in your system. And in some cases, that's okay too. Because the thing I see is like, I get a lot of law firms who are like, hey, just tell me what I should do. Just give me the roadmap. And that's not, I tell people like, look, if you want somebody who's just going to tell you what to do, I'm not your guy. Like I ask questions. I try to figure out what's the best fit for your law firm. And law firms don't want to do that largely. I was talking to somebody the other day and like, whenever there's a big project and it's not working out for a law firm, like lawyers love to bag so quickly. Like, so it's like, hey, I want to build custom reports. It's going to be great. And then it's like, oh, I can't figure out how to build a custom field on this software. Shut it down. We're done. So you have to be thoughtful and take the time to do it like in advance because you're going to save so much time and effort on the back end. That's true of like building out templates for document assembly. That's true about building workflows. That's true about picking software. Just take the time. It's going to be less than you think. And then you're set up for years. And then it's just managing. So
Setting up that foundation.
I know I talked about a lot of crazy stuff there, but I went
No.
everywhere.
I mean, it all ties in. I think the most important is making that plan, right? Because
yeah,
if you don't have that central source of truth, you are going to have a disjointed tech stack. And if you are going to leverage the silos, it's all about leveraging it efficiently and having the right key players in place to be able to push the business forward. Oh, awesome.
Well,
Since you touched
said,
on
man.
workflow,
I like that. Are we done? No. Go ahead. We'll keep going.
No, not yet.
Keep going.
We haven't even touched about AI yet.
I know.
So since we talked about automating workflows, in what ways can a case management system automate workflows? I mean, with the explosion of AI, right? How do you see that even evolving beyond the point where we're at now?
Can we take that in two steps? Let's talk about workflows first, and then let's talk about AI aided workflows because I think that's interesting. Okay, with workflows in general, it's the same thing for me. Like your case management software can help, maybe a little less than you think, but you got to build the workflows first. And nobody wants to do this because it's a pain. Like I know I don't want to build workflows either, but if you do it right and put the effort in, you're in good shape. So I have a client of mine I was working with the other day, and I was like, okay, we're building substantive case workflows for each of your cases. How many different case types do you have? And we figured out she had 28 different case types. And then we got to build a separate workflow for each of those case types. Now there's some overlap, but not entirely. And you look at that and you're like, oh my God, I got to build 28 different workflows. And so I'm like, let's just map it out. So we took one case, the simplest case. It took us 10 minutes to do it. Like, and the idea is she's not going to build those workflows herself because she wants to leverage vendors. So she's building out the roadmap effectively, and then
Right.
she's going to hand that over to somebody who can add it to the software. So 28 times 10 minutes, what is that? 280 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
If you sat down and spent 3 or 4 hours and focused on that, you could probably build pretty decent workflows for all your case types. Wow. So that's what it looks like in reality, but it's tough for people to sit down and actually do that because they think it's going to be this wholly burdensome thing. And obviously, like it's a little bit different if you're working with somebody because I've done this a million times. So I'm like, well, let's do this, let's do that. You're forgetting this, you're forgetting that. So to me, the first step is to rough this out. Like just the problem in law firms is the managing attorneys, the supervising attorneys, they're really good at understanding how a case flows, but they're not really good at coaching other people as to how that happens. So the first step is getting that out of your head and getting it into a tool, a system, a document, whatever it is, that's consumable by the people that work with you so that they can understand it and do the same things, or at least manage their parts of it. So I would just do a brainstorm. I would do a brain dump. And I would look at 4 types of workflows. I think there are 4 types of workflows for every firm. The first is the intake workflow, which is how does a lead become a client of the firm? There's a process for that. The second is the case workflow, which I talked about. At a substantive level, like how do we move this case from start to close? Simply as that. Just write down everything you know about that. The 2 other types of workflows are closing workflows, because law firms fall down on this quite a bit, which is, okay, I close the case, now what happens? Who knows? No one knows. So do you archive that file? Do you destroy it at some point? Is it a paper file? Is it an electronic file? How do you stay in touch with your former clients? If you're a personal injury firm, how do you do the disbursements that still need to happen on a case? Like nobody has systems for that. Build out a system that's a lot more streamlined as well, and it's probably going to get you more business if you're marketing to your former clients. 4th type of workflow are just administrative workflows. Like if I need new toner in the printer, who's going to do that? Where do we even order it from? Is that a fire drill every time that happens, or there's a system in place? So build those workflows out, just dump it somewhere, Word document, task management system, case management system, doesn't matter. And then you can refine it and start adding owners to those tasks. Now, the AI stuff is really interesting. So there's a product that just came. Well, so let me step back for a second. I'm just going to tease that for now. Case management softwares. Some of them are good with workflows. A lot of them are not. A lot of it is manual based tasks that you can set up one by one by one. They don't really aggregate the tasks very well. There's very little automation. Because ultimately, when you want to have workflows, part of what you want to do is have people do things that people need to do, but then you want to automate the rote tasks that nobody wants to do. So scheduling a meeting with somebody, asking someone to sign a document, collecting payment. That you don't need people to do that anymore, frankly. Some of the case management softwares aren't going to have that available. Some of the CRMs aren't going to have that available. So I like separate task management tools for that. There are workflow tools out there that are really good.
Right.
Trello, Notion, Asana, Basecamp. I'm probably forgetting some. That's just a short list, right? So you can use something like that to build out your tasks. And then what's really great is, as I talked about before, now you've got all these third-party integration tools. So you can now connect a better workflow management product to your case management system so that you can run those 2 systems simultaneously. And I think that's probably the best way to do it. And you're seeing some traction on this in legal because you've got a company that just came out. I think they're called Legal Boards. And they are basically like aping Trello and these other tools. They're creating Kanban boards for workflows. And what's happening is lawyers are trying to use those because they have direct integrations with tools like Clio and MyCase. And there's probably going to be more to come. So that's an even better way to do it as those products improve. And there'll probably be more products like that entering the market. Last thing I'll say is there's also some tools out there that will allow you to do workflows and automated notifications to your clients. Hona is one company. Case Status is another. Effectively, what you do is you create workflows, and when you do something, it's going to send an automated notification to a client, potentially through a client portal. Like, oh, hey, we just published this document to the court system. Here it is. Take a look at it. We just finished this task. We just wanted to let you know. And that shortcuts the number one complaint that clients have about lawyers is that they don't communicate with them. Now, the AI piece of this is really interesting. So, excuse me.
We appreciate you being here. Truly do.
Tremendous
warrior.
Tremendous segue. I probably have strep throat, but I'm talking about workflows. The AI stuff is really interesting. So I have consulting clients now who the meeting is me and them and ChatGPT, right? And they're like, what should my pricing be? I'm going to drop this into ChatGPT. What should my client journey be? I'm going to drop this into ChatGPT. And I mean, people might say, oh, like, am I out of a job? This is problematic for me. I think it's just another assistive tool. And what I like about it is I can go in live with clients and I can be like, okay, this is what ChatGPT told you to do about this workflow. I like a lot of this, but I would tweak these 7 things, and this is how I would do it. And it just speeds up the process, which I like. And so if you're somebody who's like, oh my God, this sounds like a lot to do, I don't know if I could actually do it, drop into like ChatGPT or Google Bard or something like that. These are great generative AI tools where you can say, I'm a family law firm. We've been practicing for 20 years in this community. I need you to build me a client journey. And it'll populate that in 30 seconds. Maybe you don't like that, but that's okay. It's a starting point. Like people sometimes just need the starting point. You can tweak it. And what I was going to say before, which I held off on, is there's this new task management product out there, which has AI built into it called Task Aid, which I really like. Task Aid, like Lemonade. And so if you're generating workflows, you can use the AI functionality in that to generate the workflows, which is great for a starting point. And then some of these other tools are implementing AI as well, like Notion, for example, which is another task management, project management tool. They've got something called Notion AI, which you can utilize to build out AI workflows as well. So you got to get it out of your head. And then if you need help with a starting point, like what does this look like as a draft? AI is phenomenal for that, although it's not going to be the final version.
Yeah, so if I'm understanding correctly, it's, using AI to gain almost like the skeletal frame, right? And then just adding your own DNA to that, just like in all law firms are different. So making sure you add that, personality, who you are, your accolades into the client journey and all of that really tends to not only set them apart, but also give them a huge head start because now they don't have to spend this time trying to come up with the content themselves.
I said in a nutshell, man, that's how you do it.
That's awesome.
You're
That's
good with the summaries. Seriously. You should work for like ClickNotes or something like that if they're still around.
Sparks Notes, I think is what they're called now.
Spark Notes, right. All right.
They had to make them, a little more
aging myself here. Yeah, that's much more exciting. Spark Notes.
Yeah, Sparks Notes, right? It has a little tinkle to it. All right, so I think we found ourselves in the AI room. So I know the integrations are fairly new, but have you seen any challenges when it comes to AI integrations?
Well, I think like it's really new at this point. And I think the potential for AI integrations in legal is phenomenal. So the first thing I think to be aware of is it's somewhat of a dicey proposition to be using like ChatGPT and Google Bard for like client-centric stuff. Like I'm not putting client information in any of those systems. And it's funny, people will come up to me and they'll be like, hey, this is amazing. All these tools are free. Well, they're free because you're the guinea pig. You're inputting information that they're using to teach their product, which that's why it happens that way. So I tell lawyers, like, don't drop confidential information in there. Like, don't trust that the case citations they're going to give you are correct because the AI's job, especially generative AI, which is what most people are using at this point or familiar with, it just wants to get you an answer. And if it can't get you an answer, it's willing to make things up. So when I talk to people about using AI, I'm like, you should treat AI like your kids. My kids are idiots. If I'm like, put your dishes away after dinner, they're not going to do it, or they're going to do a half-assed job of it. So when I tell them to put the dishes away after dinner, I have to be like, scrape your plate into the trash, clean the fork, clean the plate, put it into the right slot in the dishwasher, grab your cup, empty your cup. That's how you have to deal with AI. Step by step, very granular and specific instructions, and you'll get better results. Now, the problem with non-legal AI is that if I'm dumping prompts into ChatGPT or Bard or something, um, that doesn't necessarily have a legal database to rely on. But you put that same technology, whether it's white labeled or it's a proprietary product, and most are mixed at this point,
Right.
into a system that has legal data in it, like a legal research product, like Lexis or Westlaw. You're not
Right.
getting these hallucinations anymore because it actually has real case law to rely on. You're putting that into e-discovery software. There's some legal context in that. You're seeing case management softwares and CRMs now using generative AI to build contracts and documents, to do medical
Invoicing.
records summary, invoicing, that smart billing software, right? That kind of thing. And I think the power of this stuff is when you unify it with the right set of data, and when you've got a system that is built for lawyers in the first instance, then the AI stuff becomes really powerful. Now, of course, the issue with that is that lawyers, like a lot of service professionals, are cheap and they don't want to pay for AI. So I can use these other tools for free, or if I want to get like the better version of ChatGPT, I'm paying like $20 a month. Big
Right.
deal, right? But for some of these AI features, like if I want to get like a demand letter drafted or something, I may have to pay more for that than I pay for my entire subscription to the software just to generate
Right.
that once. And I think that's going to be an interesting bridge to cross. So, do I think lawyers are willing to pay for AI? Yes. The question is like, how much are they willing to pay for AI? Understanding that the better use case is using these tools within systems that have the data and the features that they need. I don't know if I answered everything or not.
No, no, you totally,
Did I
totally
cover
did.
everything
Um,
about AI already? Okay.
Not yet, not yet. We got a few more questions here. So when you think of AI already built into these different CRM and legal software in general, what do you think are some, I guess, ethical considerations that all lawyers should have as they start investigating and looking into these different types of technologies that are available to them now?
So the way I look at AI from an ethics perspective is you want to treat it like a paralegal or an admin person or an associate attorney. You got to check the work. You got to understand the process of how that work gets done. There's no difference. So there are ethics rules on that in the what is that? 5.3, 5.5 in most states is going to be
Hmm.
the oversight rules. I think that's what you do with AI. And I think the other thing you do with AI is because it's a technology, most states are also going to have a competency rule around how attorneys use technology. And basically, that usually falls back to do they use it in a reasonably secure way? So, if you're using an AI tool, whether it's a legal specific one or not, what you want to be doing is vetting the software to make sure it's secure, asking questions about things like second factors of authentication for access, how the data gets used, whether or not the data is encrypted, who owns the data, who gets to share the data. Those kind of questions are important to ask, and there are ethics opinions around the country on that. Like if you look at these cloud-based technology ethics opinions from about
Hmm.
10 years ago, they all have question sets about this. Here are the questions you ask of vendors. You want to do that anyway. So you got to put it through the
Just
vetting
doing your
process.
homework.
Right. Put it through the vetting process. It should also actually be part of, I think every law firm should have a written information security program, whether or not
Mhm.
it's required by law, which is basically like, here's the data we manage. Here are the loopholes where people could access that data who shouldn't have it. And here's how we stop that from happening. That's a good
Right.
tool to have in place in this instance. So I think you do all the regular things. Um, we don't necessarily need to create new ethics opinions as far as that is concerned right now, right? But the thing that's really interesting to me is moving forward, and maybe it's in the near term, is you've got these AI tools that basically are going to be thinking like a human, learning like a human, iterating, being creative. Like lawyers tell me, oh, AI could never replace a lawyer. Of course, they totally could. Like I tell people, like imagine if you were an AI, like, and you could live for 300 years in a robot body, right? Like you'd be the best lawyer ever. Like you just would be.
Experience.
You're never gonna get dementia. You're never gonna get sick. You never need a day off. Like I don't think people are giving I don't think people are giving enough credit to how transformative this whole thing is going to be. And it's not gonna happen tomorrow. It's probably not gonna happen 10 years from now, but at some point down the line, you're going to have AI aided robots sitting in law firms as administrative staff, as attorneys, frankly. That's going to happen. And then at that point, I start to think about the ethics rules and I say to myself, okay, when does AI move from being a technology to an actual employee of the law firm? So if
Right.
AI becomes an employee of the firm, then that's a little bit of a different ethical question than just managing technology. So this stuff is fascinating to me, and I think we're at the very nascent stages of what this is going to do to law firms. And it's going to be good to start with. Like I think it's going to be an assistive technology to begin with,
Hmm.
but there are obviously a lot of potential pitfalls here. If you've ever seen any science fiction movie that's ever been produced, you know that.
Yes, yes. I'm about to ask probably the spiciest question I have regarding just
Oh,
AI,
oh, okay.
right?
Yeah.
So, in your opinion, do you think AI can get to a point where it can really contribute to better decision making and strategic planning, from a partner level and just operationals level?
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's going to take some time to get there. But like I said, I think the example that I gave before of like, imagine this robot lawyer that's got an AI system built into it that never needs to sleep, that doesn't have any family relationships, that could work
Just
like
grind.
24 hours a day. Yeah, it's like it's like the perfect grinder. Great
Yeah.
analogy. And like if you do that, you're going to be pretty amazing at what you do. And if you think about what AI will become, is on the way to becoming, the idea is that it's going to be sentient like a human in the sense that it can think on its own. So you're telling me that in that environment, a sentient being is not going to be able to become a lawyer who can make creative and strategic decisions? Of course it is. Like this is one of the issues that lawyers have is that everything they think they do is like a special little snowflake. Not only do they think that machines can't replicate what they do, AI can't replicate what they do, they think the next lawyer down the hall can't do it either. But a lot of this stuff is rote, and when we get to creative thinking, AI is kind of built to do that. So I think lawyers who are out there saying, oh, like AI could never replace a lawyer, it's so far from being the truth. And that eventuality is probably closer than you think it might be. And by the way, I'm talking to somebody who does business management consulting. Do I think an AI could take over for me? Absolutely. Hopefully I will have retired by then, but that's something that could totally happen without because I do the same
Knock on
thing.
wood.
I do creative thinking, I do strategy, like lawyers do the same thing. AI will be able to do that as well.
Well, lawyers have historically been slow in adopting new technologies. Do you
No.
think that
Have they?
no? I mean, that's what I've heard. That's the word around town. Do you think AI is going to be the one tool that changes that?
Yeah, this is a good question. I've been talking about this a lot lately because the thing is like if you're an online person, like if you're on social media, if you talk to people in this space, if you're a lawyer who has a sense about technology and it's important to a law firm, what you're doing is you're probably testing it out. You're probably
Right.
having conversations about these people. And then there's somewhat of a bias that develops there because you're probably thinking, oh, everyone is doing this. but that's not the case. Like I talk to plenty of lawyers, and there are also plenty of lawyers who I don't talk to who don't know the first thing about AI, have never tried it. And I think it's going to be very similar to the last big shift in legal, which was the adoption of the cloud, which is there's got to be education in the first place. So lawyers need to know what it is. I've probably done 50 presentations on AI for bar associations in the last quarter because it's all anybody wants to talk about. And I can't tell you how many times I'm like, oh, let me just bump out of this presentation and I'm going to do some stuff in Chat GPT so you can see what it looks like. And the number of lawyers who are like, what's that? Or I haven't tried that before. Like a lot of people haven't even touched this. And also, they're not necessarily aware that the tools they're using every day also have AI components built into them. So if you're using Microsoft Outlook and writing an email and it does a completed text for you, that's weird. That's exactly what I would have said. That's AI. Google does the same thing. You can do that in documents. So it's similar to the cloud, where I used to get people who are like, I got to talk to you because I really feel like I need to be on the cloud. And I'm like, well, I have some good news and I have some bad news. You just sent me a message from an AOL.com account. So you're already in the cloud. Now let's do it the right way. And I think it's going to be the same thing for AI. Like people are going to be experiencing AI in some cases without knowing it. And I think that's probably going to be the vast majority of attorneys. How long did it take attorneys to adopt the cloud? Like a vast majority of attorneys to adapt the cloud? Probably like 13, 14 years, honestly.
Yeah.
It may
And
take
it
the
was
same
bad
amount of time for AI.
experiences that kind of led to that long amount of time, right? Those infrastructure hacks, right? Not having the correct firewalls behind, the technology or whatever. So yeah, absolutely.
I'm still pitching people on like the viability of the cloud. I'm like, why am I having these conversations in 2023? This has been determined already. I think that like it's going to be a long adoption cycle in AI for most law firms, but it's kind of critical because you're going to have these firms that adopt AI and they're just going to crush everybody.
It was the same thing that happened right at COVID, right? You saw a very large exodus of, older attorneys who they just didn't care to learn the new technology, and they chose to retire. Those that kind of tiptoed on the line, they survived, and now, they're getting back up to their regular levels pre-COVID.
Right.
And you have those that immediately transitioned, and those individuals they don't have an overhead with an office anymore, right? They are running that virtual environment. They are starting to embrace AI, and those are the individuals who are able to open offices across many states,
Right.
at least from my experience and what I've experienced and what I've observed.
I mean, the competitive advantage is massive for both cloud and AI. Like I remember I was working as a consultant in Boston when the Boston Marathon bombings happened in 2013. And there were probably like 30 firms at ground zero. And they all called me like the next day. And they're like, well some of them were like, oh, I'm good. Like I just picked up my cloud infrastructure and I'm working from a library. And these other people, like their offices there was like a federal investigation going on. They couldn't get to their offices for like a month, which means they had no way to access their client files at all. And it's just staggering how folks have not, and this is a really small amount of people at this point, but it's like that not everybody has put together the fact that like, oh, this flexibility is a win for me as a business owner. And I think of people are going to have like come to Jesus moments like that too when it comes to AI. Maybe they get an e-discovery package and they're like, oh my God, I can't get through this. And the other law firm is cranking through and they're like, hey, let's set a trial. Let's move on to the next stage. What's going on here? And then you're going to have expectations from clients too. Clients are going to want things done faster, more accurately, because they're going to just anticipate that you're using AI. Or worse yet, they may be like, why do I need a lawyer? I'll just get my contract drafted through AI. So this is going to fundamentally change a lot of things for attorneys. So what I would say, like, if you're listening now, if you're listening to an archived version of this presentation, like just start experimenting now, because this is one thing that you definitely do not want to be left behind on, because the uptick may actually be quicker than it was for cloud services.
Definitely. And since we're talking about, virtual and the abilities and really benefits that being on the cloud bring, I kind of want to tackle a little bit of virtual staffing and
you
some
guys
of the
do a little bit
benefits
of that, right?
Just a little bit, here and there, provide
Sample.
every single support role we have available. So on that topic, right, what do you think this evolution to the cloud has done for staffing itself? Historically, lawyers are paying pretty high dollar for their office managers, paralegals, bookkeepers. I've heard some law firms pay in the upwards of hundreds of thousands of dollars for a bookkeeper to be available 10 hours a week. What are your thoughts around that and the potentials that a cloud, software in a cloud environment really brings for law firms in terms of expenses, staffing, and just overall progress?
I love it, man. Like it's shocking to me that people still want people working in offices, knowledge workers, especially. Like if I'm doing something physical, like all right, if I'm an AI person and I'm building we got those robot dogs running around Boston. Have you seen those? Like if
I've
I'm
seen
building
those.
robot dogs, right? I mean, I probably have to be in the office to do that, to test them out and stuff, at least. I might design them on a computer, but like if you're an attorney or if you work for a law firm in a support capacity and you're drafting stuff and you're replying to emails, you don't need to be in an office like ever. Because the expectation is not that you're going to be like bringing in clients. Your job is to support the clients that the firm already has. So when what's surprising to me is that a lot of law firms are now saying, hey, we want people in the office more. You're in the office one day, we want you to be in the office 2 days. You're in the office 2 days, we want you to be in the office 3 days, which makes no sense to me because A, it allows you to offer a benefit that other people don't have if you're more flexible than other firms.
Right.
And B, like I want the best people to work for me. And so if I can only hire people from a 20-mile radius who can actually get to my office on a recurring basis, I am guaranteed to have a smaller talent pool. So in terms of like support staff, like if you got a lawyer, that lawyer's got to be licensed in the jurisdiction you're working in. So
Right.
that's going to limit your pool naturally. But if I'm hiring support staff who don't have to be licensed in any particular jurisdiction, I want to have the widest pool of people available to me so I can choose the best people possible. And if
Right.
I'm utilizing support staff overseas, well, maybe I'm paying less money for that too. And maybe they're just as good or better than the person I could hire who lives down the street from me. So I tell law firms all the time, like it's a difficult hiring market. So A, if you can't find employees, like administrative staff on a contract basis that you can potentially scale up and down is a great option. And then the second thing is expand your talent pool and look for the best people. Like it's just a logical argument to my mind.
Right. No, 100%. How do you, as a lawyer or partner at a law firm, how do you choose between, or how do you even determine whether you need a full-time staff member, whether you need someone part-time, or whether outsourcing a specific project or a specific role within the firm is the best choice for you?
That's a hard thing for law firms, honestly. Like I chalk this up to work allocation. And law firms often don't have a great idea of what anybody's working on. So we talked a little bit about this in that like law firms don't rely on data. They don't look at data. So in a law firm environment, let's say I got a law firm where I have 5 attorneys and 10 support staff people.
Right.
As a managing attorney, the traditional way of thinking is like, hey, we got these people, we got this work, and the work is getting done. Great. So if there's any monkey wrench whatsoever that's thrown into that, like you have a busy month, it's a disaster, a flaming dumpster fire. But you've got all these tools available, like we talked about. You got CRM tools, you got case management software tools, you've got productivity software, any of which could generate reports on the type of work you have done. So when I talk to lawyers about hiring in any capacity, whether it's full-time, in-person, part-time, offshore, just overflow staff, I always want to run down the numbers in terms of like how much work do we actually have? What are people doing? Um, because if there's an overflow number that you're looking to cover, I would just want to know, do we need 10 hours this month? Do we need 15 hours this month? Or is it more like 50? At which point it's
Right.
like, okay, we got to get somebody who's full time in here. And I think obviously, like if I have my druthers as a law firm manager, I am looking for virtual employees everywhere I can, in part because that may be a forcing function for me to do more things virtually. So sometimes I have conversations with lawyers where they're like, I need to hire somebody. I'm in like Mississippi and I need to get somebody to come in here and collate my paper documents. And that gives me an opportunity to say, okay, what if instead, now hear me out, what if instead we scan the documents, we have electronic files, and then you hire somebody virtual to manage that? Not only is that going to help you to run a more efficient firm and maybe hire a better person because, again, you're expanding your job pool, but it's also going to force you to go paperless if you haven't wanted to do that before. So I look at all the data I can get and try to figure out, based on this information, not on the best guess I can make, like what do I need, and then what is that role? Because that's part of it too. Like it's funny to me that a lot of law firms will hire people and they'll have like a job description and it'll be like for associate attorney or client coordinator, but no one actually has a job description in the firm. So what I like to do with law firms is like, okay, you've got like these 15 employees or whatever. Let's get everybody a job description so we know what people are doing. And then that gives you a better sense of what work you need done and how much of it you need done as well. So I guess it tracks back to what we were talking about before a little bit too, which is like if you plan this effectively and if you put in the effort ahead of time, you're going to save yourself a lot of trouble on the back end. So anytime a law firm is looking to hire for any role of any kind, my first thing is like, let's look at the numbers. Let's figure out what you're going to pay this person. Let's figure out what value they bring back to the firm. Even if that's an intangible value, we can at least have a conversation about it.
The KPIs, the key performance indicators of the growing law firm, and developing a game plan, right? Through and through, making sure that, you have a change management process as well, right? In the event that your plan pivots,
Right.
like all small
Right.
businesses do, you have to anticipate those changes in that and get yourself out of making those reactive decisions almost, right?
I mean, I'm a huge data person. When I talk to law firms, I try to get them to identify the data sources they have, clean them up. And one of the steps I take is like, let's look at the software you have and see what kind of reports you've got built in there already. And I have this conversation quite a bit where I talk to lawyers and it's like, okay, I am now going to generate this report for the first time. Oh my God, look at all this amazing and interesting information I've got at my fingertips now. I didn't know that was happening. And then once you get them excited about that, where they're like, oh, wow, look at this. We got an aged accounts receivable report. Oh, this person owes me $20,000. Did not know that. Then it's an easier conversation to be like, okay, let's think about KPIs that exist for your law firm. So if we're talking about like bringing people on, I'm looking at how much time they're billing. I'm looking at how much of that time we're realizing, like how much of it makes its way to an invoice. I'm also looking at utilization rate, like when somebody's working for me, what are they doing? How does that break down? How much of that is billable time? And even beyond that, I'd like to know, like, okay, when it's not billable time, what are you doing? Because that might be viable in some cases. Like if you've got somebody in your office who's like the paralegal slash admin person, and that person's job is to take new intake calls, and that person's job is to respond to clients, but that person's job is also to draft documents from time to time. I want to know, like, okay, if your utilization rate is like 20% because you're only spending 2 out of every 10 hours billing, that may be okay because I need you to do these other things that also have intrinsic value to the law firm, because
Right.
maybe that means we bring on another 2 new clients a month, which is important to us as well. So if you can align um, data sets with performance metrics, then you're in business because people actually like that. Like not just attorneys, but also staff people at firms. I have this conversation all the time. Usually if a boss of yours has a beef with your performance, usually the conversation goes like this: I don't like what you're doing. And then as the employee, you can be like, well, I do like what I'm doing. And then what do you do? Like that's just a qualitative discussion. You can't do anything with that. But if you can say, hey, um, you're operating at a 20% utilization rate right now. We want you to do at least 3 hours of billable work a day to get up to 30% if you have a 10-hour day. Like now you got something you can work with. You got a goal that somebody can achieve. And that stuff is really powerful. And so the problem with a lot of law firms is that a lot of these conversations are very he said, she said. They're super ad hoc because they're based on gut feelings. But if you've got reportable data that you can lean on, it's very easy to quantify something, and it's very easy to set up goals that people can actually run with. Because if people have goals, they like to achieve them. There's a little bit of gamification that goes on there too.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And I guess once they have those goals set up, right, they can essentially dissect what are the non-revenue generating tasks versus the actual revenue generating tasks, right? And
Yeah.
in terms of running support, then they can use their capital more efficiently, use that to, hire support staff that really grind, right? Like we wish those AI robots would eventually. While you have
They will.
your money earners, right, putting into billing.
Yeah. So if you're thinking about it as like, I want to bring somebody in, and they're going to be 100% grinding. I just want them to do work for me.
Right.
But with the lawyer, like let's say I got some lawyers, and maybe I feel like we could generate more business if I could free up each of my partners to 20% of their time spent on marketing. And my associates, I want to free them up to 15% of their time focused on marketing.
Right.
If you know those numbers, you can actually pull that off. If you don't, you have no clue what you're doing, really.
It turns anecdotal at that point, right? Like it's just a thought, it's just what your impression is, but you could be blinded to
Right.
80% of what's really happening within the firm.
It's super ephemeral, and people always think they're doing better than they are. I talk
Right.
to, like, every time I talk to lawyers, like, oh, I thought I was billing more than that, or I thought I was taking on more of those cases. Or when I'll do revenue projections with a firm, I'll be like, okay, what's your average case value? They're always 25% higher than it actually is. So it's just a lot of guesswork, and the problem with the guesswork is that they're guessing wrong.
Well, it sounds like they need to talk to you, Jared.
Hell yeah, talk to me. I mean, it's
Absolutely.
it's perhaps demented, but I do like talking about this stuff. That's what I do all day.
At the beginning, you said that you might be a legal operations nerd, sir. I think you
I might
welcome
be.
to the club. Happy to have you.
Oh, good. Is there like a T-shirt that I
Awesome. Well,
get now, or what?
if you get one and it's pink, that's no, nothing else to be said about that. But I think we're actually running up on our time here. So just to be respectful of our guests right now, and of course your time, Jared, I'm gonna go ahead and just give the closing remarks and just really thank everyone for taking the time and joining us and being part of this very, very fun and educative conversation with Jared. It's important to remember that the legal industry's efficiency is not just about tools and processes, but also adaptability, strategic thinking, and ethical considerations above all. Make sure you're embracing change, make sure you're leveraging technology wisely, and always prioritize the well-being of your team to ensure the most success for your team. So on behalf of Shift6 and our guest speaker, Jared Correia, thank you for your engagement and commitment to navigating the dynamic and currents of the legal profession. We're wishing you all a continued success in optimizing your law firm's efficiency. And until next time, stay inspired, keep innovating, and happy holidays if we don't see you. Take care, y'all.
Thanks. Happy holidays, everybody.